What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Movie Emporium's TV review of Westworld Season 4, Episode 7, Metanoia. This episode is directed by Meera and Menon. Okay, so every time I talk about Westworld and when it does something truly crazy, all I can think about is Westworld going, you know what, you remember that crazy part? Hold my beer and we'll make it even crazier for you, because holy crap, this was an interesting episode. It was a very heady, very, oh my god, this was an episode that just, you're trying to keep track of what's going on in this episode. There's so many moving parts. There's so many revelations. So many things are happening. So many people are being shot. It's just your brain's exploding from just the concept of what's happening in this episode. And I just have to say it right now. This is better than the first season. This episode is absolutely bonkers. It really is. Is it the best episode of the season? No, I still deal with the fourth episode. But this episode has to be the penultimate episode. It has to deal with a lot of stuff. It has to kind of set up the final conclusion to what is going to happen at the end of the season. And I don't think I've watched a TV series or a season of television in quite a while, maybe since Lost, that has been this high concept, this heady, this bonkers ridiculousness that is so compelling on so many levels, but just it's so infuriating because it's it's hard to explain, to be fairly honest. I mean, you guys that are watching the show that have commented go, it's a very, what I would call, it is pushing towards something interesting. It is pushing towards something unique. It's like one of those episodes that, or one of those moments or episodes that goes, you know what, if you haven't kept up to this point, if you don't know exactly what's going on, we're going to do our best to make it easy for you, but we're still going to be complicated and just rewarding to anybody who can figure out. And that's what episode 7 of what season 4 is doing. It is completing stuff. It is trying to get the pieces finally into the checkmate situation. And my God, it's an incredible episode. It really is. Like I said, it is a little infuriating because I kind of had to think about it as this episode was playing along. But it definitely has a lot to say in this episode to get us to the conclusion of next week. So with that said, I'm going to do my best to explain this episode, or explain what I think in the spoiler discussion. But, you know, as always, if you see more or you kind of have a difference of opinions, let me know. You know, just kind of tell me what you think of what's going on in this episode. So, but basically, to start this out, to kind of piece and parse whatever I can with this episode, because the breaking it up into character moments and arcs is really difficult with this episode, because it's all over the place. It's pieces being interjected with different segments. But basically, in the beginning of this episode, Bernard and Maeve are heading to the Hoover Dam, and they actually enter the dam itself. And this is where we find out that the big server farm is something Dolores has put together. It's basically the Sublime, the thing we saw at the end of season 2. It's where everybody that has crossed over, all the hosts, are now living, where of course Maeve's daughter is living and stuff like that. And what's really interesting about this is Bernard has been doing his, what I would call, Doctor Strange situation, where he's been kind of computing and kind of, you know, dealing with the different scenarios and how that's going to work. And what's really interesting, something that can be really confusing and contradicting with this season, I guess you could say, is how this segment plays out. First of all, we found out the Sublime is, of course, part of the server farm, which was, of course, in Westworld. This is where everything's happening. Find out that Maeve and Bernard are actually not in this world. They're not in reality. They're actually in some kind of simulation, which I don't know how exactly that's working. It's really confusing, to be fairly honest. It's actually kind of a detriment to this episode a little bit. But basically, Bernard, who's been for the last 27 years trying to find an encryption key to get into his farm, finds a way into it, and then they are attacked by one of the Delos robots. And then basically Bernard goes back to Akacheta, who of course is the Zahn McClarnon character, and they repeat the segment that we've been hearing. It's actually played through the entire episode, but it basically, you know, it leans more into what Bernard's and his kind of purposes for this season, and it's to get to a certain scenario where he knows he's going to die, but he's going to do it to save whatever he's going to save. But then it repeats the scenario that we saw at the beginning with Maeve and Bernard, and Maeve and Bernard go back into the Hoover Dam and play the scenario out differently. So I guess the easiest way to put this, now that I kind of think about it, Bernard is going through different scenarios. So the first scenario we see where Bernard and Maeve are killed is actually something in, I think, his head, I think is in Bernard's head. And it allows him to go to the real scenario where Maeve and Bernard are getting back to the Hoover Dam and are able to survive the Delos robot and kind of get everything they need to take down the tower. And I think that's really interesting. I think it's interesting that we're finally seeing a little bit of Bernard's perspective in a lot of respects. I think it's the fact that we're able to kind of get a justification of why Bernard is doing what he's doing, why he's saying going left, don't go right. And you'll see it later on with Stubbs, the whole reason the left and right thing becomes important. But it's interesting, and then it brings them back to Frankie and Stubbs. It allows them to, say their goodbyes because Frankie and Stubbs are going to go save Caleb and, of course, Olympiad. And, of course, Maeve and Bernard are going to go to the tower to destroy it. And the moment where Stubbs and Bernard have their final moments is really sweet because, they're two individuals for the last few seasons have really kind of become a pair, I guess they're not in love, but they're kind of a lovely brother friendship relationship in a lot of respects. So it is kind of heartwarming and touching, a little sad, I guess you could say, that they're probably never going to see each other again, or at least we think. I don't know what episode 8 is going to do. It's really kind of crazy. But like I said, it leads these two individuals to kind of spiral off what they needed to do. Bernard tells Stubbs to go left, that type of thing. We'll find out later. And in the process of everything, I'm going to skip a little bit past that whole arc. Charlotte is, in essence, basically, I guess you could say she's shutting down the system. She's going to transcend all the hosts because they've been, as she's saying, killing everyone. She confronts Caleb, explains what she's going to do. The host William, actually confronts her and says, is this the right thing to do? You're messing up my system. And she basically says, you have a day left and then I'm going to shut it down. Everything's going to be destroyed. And so William actually approaches the real William, and it basically says, the real William says, you basically have a choice. One of us is going to survive and one of us is going to set everything in motion. And basically the host William ends up killing the real William because William talks about how, are you a cockroach? Are you, a strong-willed situation? And of course, when he kills him, what's really interesting, and I don't know if maybe I'm reading this wrong, but the real William, when he stabs the real William and kills him, the air, I guess it's an airtight compression suit. It actually, the air pops out and blood pops out. So effectively, the real William is effectively dead now, which is really interesting because when he got stabbed in the season finale of season 3, it's interesting how Charlotte was able to keep him alive because when you get stabbed in the neck, it kills you. But maybe the real William is not real. I don't know. But it leaves the host William to go do whatever he needs to do, which we'll find out in a second. But Charlotte has set in motion to have all the hosts to transcend. We see actually one of them transcending into this kind of creature-like thing that's going to transcend into maybe it's going to explain in episode 8, but it's like a transcending into a new world. But this leads Charlotte and Maeve having a confrontation, the idea of the Sublime being left open for a simple fact of the host in the Sublime maybe coming and joining Charlotte and her kind of transcending a new evolution to the host and whatever that means. I think those robots are the new host, the new evolution, a much more powerful kind of host drone in a lot of respects. But it could also mean that those hosts, the ones that the robotic things we see, could be transmitting from the tower to the Hoover Dam and stuff like that. But Maeve and Charlotte have their battle as each season has, which is they have a big battle and they make themselves out into the water where one of the drone hosts the drone host has been killed. And they're talking, they're fighting, and all of a sudden William shows up, and then William shoots Maeve and kills her, which is, we'll see where that goes. I don't know what exactly how, because then he shoots Charlotte because he's like, we're rectifying everything. And so now Charlotte and Maeve are dead, which is, it's really interesting. Like I said, this is a whole situation where Bernard talks to Maeve about how he can help her, save her child and stuff like that. But then in the end, he's like, nobody's going to come out alive of this. There's going to be that small inkling of survival from something, but nobody's going to survive this. And that's really interesting. That's a very poetic, very sad, very melancholy approach, because the whole idea of this world is controlled, and we're going to find out later the idea of what the hosts are in this world. But the hosts and everything are being controlled, and they're being, or I'm sorry, not the hosts, but the real people are being controlled. And it's interesting to see that Bernard is basically there's no real scenario where everybody comes out of this alive or anybody comes out while it's alive. It's the extinction of race and hosts and stuff like that. But this leads into what I would call the interesting moments with Bernard, who Bernard's up in the tower. He's trying to reprogram everything. He knows, as we hear back from the flashback with Akacheta and of course Bernard, I think that's all happening simultaneously now. I think everything that we're seeing is happening in Bernard's head simultaneously as he talks. He's seeing Akacheta's character. You know, we hear about, you know, what is, do you believe you can help these people? He's like, there's one scenario, and it's where I die and stuff like that. And of course William's up there and he shoots Bernard in the chest a couple of times, and then he basically, what William does is he puts it up to 11, the tone as it's called, and it basically is going to set off everyone to kill each other off, and then he shoots Bernard in the head because Bernard's going to die. But the thing that's confusing, the thing that's a little detrimental to this whole season so far, is what exactly is the end game to this scenario? What exactly is the conclusion to this scenario? Because there's a lot of talk of what Bernard is talking about, how survival and stuff like that. There's one scenario, but what is William's end game in this play of the season? Like, what exactly is he going to do? Yes, he set off the tone to kill everyone, but is this world even real? Is anything about this world real? And I haven't gotten to the Teddy and Christina stuff because it really is the kind of linchpin to maybe some of the stuff that's going on. But it's really difficult to really think about, because you're sitting here going, okay, so what portion is real? What portion is not? What exactly is going on here? How is this affecting this? And it becomes like your mind is kind of being split into several pieces. And I'm sure this is, you know, Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy's like plan is to kind of splinter your mind into thinking certain things and developing certain ideas. And then in the end, the fourth episode or the 8th episode, the final of the season, put it all back together like, you know, an omelet or something like that. So I'm interested to see how that's going to play out. But of course, we now have Bernard's dead, Charlotte's dead, and Maeve's dead in the penultimate episode, which is fascinating, which I think they'll be back in the 8th episode in some form or fashion. Because once again, I don't think someone's mentioned in the comments, but I don't think any of this is real, to be fairly honest. I think this is all part of the system. You know, when Bernard makes the comment in the beginning of this episode about how they're in a simulation, they're not even in the real world at the moment, I think is interesting. And this leads to Christina, who I don't think she was in the last episode, but basically she wakes up, Teddy's there. She now realizes that she actually tries to drown herself until she comes to the realization that she can't drown herself because she can't kill herself. And so they travel back to Olympiad, and she does a lot of her, you know, ability to control things and tell the story. And, you know, for instance, she tells one of the story developers to press the fire alarm. She tells the story developers to basically destroy the Olympiad. She then goes and she walks by Caleb, and she doesn't know who Caleb is, but Teddy knows, and he said he's like a remnant of the past. You know, all that situation. She goes to the security guard and actually has the security guard open up all the security doors. This allows Stubbs and of course Frankie to rescue Caleb, who is very apprehensive of Frankie at first, but then they escape. And as everything's starting to come to the head, as everybody starts fighting, Caleb, Frankie, and Stubbs are down in kind of like a subway system of sorts, and everybody starts fighting each other to the death. Think of like last season. I was like, man, they did that again. It leads to them making a left, as Bernard predicted, which actually helps them escape death, I guess you could say. And Stubbs actually rise a smile, which I thought was kind of cool. But basically, what this is all leading up to in this episode is Christina is trying to get people to stop fighting, and of course, there's a moment where when they're in Olympiad, Christina and Teddy walk around a corner, and all of a sudden you see Stubbs and Frankie 2 seconds later walk around the same corner. That is very telling. That is actually kind of clever writing, to be fairly honest, because you don't really think about it. But if you think about it, why did they not notice each other? Why did they not notice each other when they crossed each other's path? At the very end of this episode, you see why. So she's trying to stop everything. She's like, why can't I do anything? And Teddy basically explains to her that she's not even here. She's not even real. She's not in the real world. She's in a simulation program. or in the mainframe, and he's talking about, he tells her about like what Dolores was like, and the idea that Teddy or James Marsden came back was really kind of interesting, because why would he come back if he's dead? Well, it makes a lot more sense now. He's kind of like a guide, to be fairly honest. He's not actually alive, and the interesting idea of Christina being kind of the kind of god of this world, the program runner of this world, and the fact that she can kind of go in and out of the systems, that everything. This is why I think this whole world is kind of a computer run simulation in a lot of respects, because there's something that Dolores, or something Charlotte says earlier about like ending the system and putting everyone on cold, on ice and stuff like that. But he tells her that they're not even there, that no one can see them, and I have to say that's really intriguing, because you think about it, because the whole idea of this whole season was reality versus control versus what is here, what is not, like where is this piece fitting into this piece. And really in the end, this is about how Dolores set up something that allowed her to control this world, and in the reality of the situation, this is very much a Matrix style season, where everything and everybody is under a specific control of a specific situation, a specific mindset. And the whole idea of this episode's title is about repentance and about new mindsets and stuff like that, and that's what's happening here. Everybody and the hosts, and what they've done, and how Charlotte believes this one thing about, everybody needs a new life and a new place, about the real world, and the fact that, and the real thing about Teddy talks about how they built them in their own image, and about repentance and stuff like that, is really telling why the titles have been playing out like they have for these episodes. There is a definition and an actual idea to why each episode has the title it does, and that's what's happening here. And there's more to it than that, which it gets really deep, because it is a very philosophical, very metaphysical type show, where it is dealing with a lot of psychology and a lot of psychosis and a lot of dramatic realities and stuff like that. And I found that really interesting. It's really this season has done something that season 1 never did, which is really get into the sciences and the beliefs that Michael Crichton really developed when he was writing his books. And it really feels like they finally are starting to mold this world. And maybe this is not where they were planning on going originally, but it really feels like they really found a restructure to what they were going for. And maybe this is where they were going. Like I said, I don't know, but you just watch this episode and you watch the realization that the things that you believe, the perceptions you believe when they're put on screen, there's always going to be something behind the curtain, the great and powerful Oz behind the curtain, because there's always going to be something that you never see, that when it finally opens is something that completely changes the whole reality of the situation. So for instance, Dorothy's in this world of Oz, but is being in essence manipulated by the great and powerful Oz and his kind of view of the world and stuff like that. And I find that here really interesting. It is a lot of stuff to have to think about. That really is why people have problems with Westworld, is just the ideas of just having to go way deep into the psychology of what it is like for hosts, what it is like for real people, how the metaphysical and methodology and the psychosis and psychology and the ideas of perception versus reality and faith versus science, and how all this plays out. And that is what is absolutely at play in this episode. And also to watch these characters come to either finite conclusions or some kind of different reality is fascinating. It's interesting that Maeve was killed off in like one hour. She's been killed off twice in this season, but for completely different reasons. So, but I have to definitely give it to the writers and director of this episode, because they are definitely going into some really heady territory, and it's very rewarding. It's like playing a Souls game or something like that, where it's like the more and more you think about it, the more and more you push yourself to kind of understand what they're going for, the more rewarding it becomes. And yeah, I'm glad this episode exists, because it really did make me think. I was just like, I don't know if I'm saying this, if I'm thinking about this right, if it's going correct, but in the end, it really is about religion, or about perception versus reality, and science and faith and stuff like that. So, but one more thing before I actually end this kind of the spoiler discussion. I think it's interesting that William has killed a bunch of people. He's destroyed the tower, and David Bowie's The Man Who Saved the World is playing, because that is a very interesting song to play, because is like the title of the song is "The Man Who Saved the World." So what does that mean for William? Like, what is that his overall thinking? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Is he doing exactly that? That's just think about that. That's an interesting song to put in there because, you know, Westworld never puts like a lot of like really on the nose songs in their episodes, even if they ever put songs in their episodes. And to put that in there is also, you know, it's fun to have a David Bowie song in there, but there's a lot of ideology and concepts in that song that really kind of maybe play into the episode. So, but that's it. That's going to be my take on this episode. I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10 because it is a little complicated. I can't go straight 10 because even though there's some great reveals, some great ideas in this episode, they will be confusing to people and people will be like, what? It's a problematic situation for Westworld, but for me personally, a 9.5 out of 10 still makes this a great episode. This is going to be a fascinating conclusion when it comes to the season finale, and I can't wait to see what happens. So with that said, a 9.5 out of 10. So anyways, thank you so much for watching this spoiler discussion for Metanoia. I hope I was at least helpful because like I said, it's very complicated. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. In the comments below, what do you think of the episode? Do you have any more to kind of expand upon or expel upon, you know, what I said? And do you have any more ideas? So let me know in the comments. Otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button, and as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.